Greetings, everyone. Let me say peace, love, light to you all, and welcome all. Uh, Hope all is well with everyone. May all be well with your loved ones, and uh, any and everything that you are seeking to accomplish, righteous and positive within the week, and forward into the future. So peace to everyone that is watching. Peace to everyone that will be joining us. Um, Welcome, welcome. So I was here putting together the PDFs that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, the documentations and the links to certain information. And I was sorting out, I was looking for a few other documents that I want to mail off to a fellow brother of ours before I do um, that live on those documents about the gene editing and the George Soros funding to the University of the West Indies and these things before I do that live. But that live is coming up after this one, probably within this week. But this here, so my brother asked me if I saw a particular interview because I don't really watch or pay attention to what these folks are doing unless someone shares with me um, what's going on. Because after dealing with them for so many years, we already know the blueprint. We know what they're doing. We know their next move or what it is that they're looking to do. It's not rocket science. It's very predictable, and that's what you understand, and that's what you can see when you realize that you're dealing with gluttonous people. Uh, it's not hard. So one does not need to track their platforms or track what their activities are because one already knows it. I'm going to share a video with you guys of the former prime minister of the Jamaica Corporation interviewing the um, chief of the Kung Pung Maroons, the subsidiary of the Jamaica Corporation, Richard Curry. And the reason why I show these things is for transparency. Okay? It's to show you that the blueprint that is taking place within the Caribbean is the same blueprint that have been done on the mainland for years. That these are one and the same people that hid in hand that has always had their fellows put in particular positions to disrupt any form of true awakening, to disrupt or to deter or to sidebar any form of true progress of indigenous people, of rightful heirs, or people who truly comprehend the historical value of history, of our ancestors, of ourselves now today, our mindset. Like it says there, freedom is first achieved within the mind. If you cannot see freedom, if you cannot think that you are free, if you cannot move as a free person without fear of the bullies out there, then you cannot fight for freedom. And those who ha- have a strong will, a strong mind, and a rampant heart You are the targets. We are the targets of disingenuous, underhanded, hidden hand people who will seek to submerge themselves within our societies, within the mindset of our children, within our communities, to divert us away from the true fight and from the true information, to get us to think in the construct of a slave mind or a submissive mind where they can come and dictate and take over our thought process because they are hidden hands of the opposition. And what is the opposition? The opposition is any and all parties involved, known and unknown, willing and unwilling. Because once you play a part in trying to get me to give up the right to my ancestral identity, or you try to put out fabricated documentations out there that is identifying not just I, but I's homeland and people as an entity that we are not, or a majority of us are not, and you put that information out there as if it is the majority of us, that is paper genocide, that is ethnocide. Now, if you at first did not know, and the information has been introduced to you, where you do now know, but out of ignorance or blind fealty to an organization that you have sworn or taken an oath to, for your own comeuppance, for your own monetary wealth, for your own source of power, let's say, but it comes at the demise of I and many others like I, then you are the opposition. You're the ops, as they say. Now, it is important because what we've been saying over the years now, and it is important that we focus on the Maroons. And the reason why it is important that we focus on the Maroons, because we're in a energy shift of harvesting of energy, especially after, I don't know if the blood moon is finished, but the blood moon that was going on within this month here. Real nice energy. But anyway, the historical context that has been pushed out generations after generations about the Maroons, we must come into the understanding that majority of that story was a fabricated story to throw you off from your true identity. And this is why when you see the chief of the what is called the Akungpung Maroons pushing this fight for sovereignty of the or for the sovereign state, and it's going nowhere, it's because our ancestors were not Maroons. And you must comprehend, where did the source of Maroon come from? What truly is a Maroon? And because he and his political party chooses to use words like Moors and African diaspora, and they throw everything in there, every name in there that has nothing to do with the original identity of the people, or the first people of the Americas, or let me say one of the first people of the Americas, because you have Arawaks, Mayas, Incas, Aztecs, Toltecs, you know, There was many of us here. But for us whom know that our lineage goes back to whichever one of those societies, whichever one of those nations, tribes, he is identifying as everything outside of that. He came to the States. He became indoctrinated as a Moor. His left and his right hand has done the same. They're Jesuits. Jesuits who are also a part of the Islamic nation as well. This is why you have a rise in Islamic population in the Caribbean. They've came here and they've been indoctrinated underneath the Moorish banner. This is why he'll say Walam alaikum and Assalamu alaikum and these things. If I said it right. Right? And now this is not a jab at the Muslim religion out there. You know, it's no jab at you guys. Speaking of corrupt individuals who want us to go with an identity that is just not us here in the Americas, of our truthful ancestors. Okay? It has nothing to do with us. Now, here you have the interview with Richard Curry and the former Prime Minister of the Jamaica Corporation, Bruce Golden. And they're speaking on the rights, or if the Maroons have any form of sovereignty, or if they can claim to be sovereign or a sovereign state. Now, this is an interesting conversation because the reason why, before I even heard this conversation, how I knew how it was going to go. And I'm going to also show you something, because nowadays what I'm also hearing from a lot of folks out there is that Ethiopians were here, that the Egyptians were here, and they built all these great pyramids throughout the Americas, and they're still trying to hijack our story to throw it back into an Africanized identity. That is against nature. You don't see an hyena going over in the lion's den and building its own den. The lion is not going to have that. The lion is not going to have you, the hyena, come over into my den and build your own den and procreate and populate in my area. Okay? If you're passing through, fine, you're passing through. But as long as you're going back home, not staying here and setting up for a forever live. That is just not true. In this world, you have predator and you have prey. A prey never stays in one place. The prey is always the nomad. The gazelle, horses, buffaloes, they're always traveling. But a predator, more so, have a secured location. You understand? It's nature. It's not just nature for animals, it's nature for man as well. So when people are telling you all these different nations back then from around the world came and they all built a home here, why would I stay in my house and sit there and watch you grow in population and push my people out of lands that they've been on since the beginning of time? That makes no sense. But if we're doing business and you are coming here for trade and you're taking your ass back home, fine. That makes more sense. You come and you visit for a while, but you go back home. It is not natural. Like what we're seeing now today, when the Chinese come and they bring over hundreds of thousands of Chinese to come work, which were prisoners from Chinese prisons. And they just stay set up shop and they acquiring hundreds of thousands of acres of your land, millions of acres. And you're being told there's not enough space for you to buy a house here or there. Oh, you can't go down to that area of the land. This is lands that you and your peoples have been on. Your ancestors have been on since the beginning of time. And here you have these colonizers coming and just taking up, and you're being pushed back. So when people are telling you the Ethiopians and the Egyptians were here and they built all these great, that's a lying story. That's a bull crap story. Fabricated fables by people with strong imaginations. The next thing I see that they're pushing is this blood quantum thing. Okay, if every tribe in the Americas had old blood, that's just not possible. Who gave you blood quantum? Who came out and gave you blood quantum? Your colonizer came out and gave you blood quantum. Understand? The colonial forces came and gave you blood quantum. Okay? And the reason why they're pushing that is because they understand that during and after the wars, they pushed a campaign to eliminate majority of the men of our ancestors and took in the ladies, kidnapped the ladies, had children with the ladies. And now there goes the mixture of blood. And those people know how to identify through now the blood quantum of who those people are. And they'll start pushing that blood quantum and saying, yes, well, these are the original people and these are, and that's bull. It just means that they are the mixed children of the ancestors that was raped. They are the mixed children of the ancestors who were slaughtered, but their babies was left back and the colonizers took the babies when the babies became adult, bred them. This is why they came up with their blood quantum. Now, this part here that I'm saying is also going into the whole genome, gene editing concept that is going on now today. But I want to show you something. Even though Bruce Golan is a brother of Curry, because they are part of the same fraternity now. They're part of the same fraternity, and his hands is going to show you. You know, his hand signs is going to show you they're apart. And he took it light on him. But even though he took it light on him, he still showed like, brother, what you're saying makes no sense. Okay? There's stages when these people are corrupt, and there's stages when these people are just going to blatant tell you the truth. Now, the reason why I knew how this conversation was going to go is because, like I said, for about 3 years, we sat down with his left and his right hand, right? Alex and Malkia. And behind the scenes, they were researching with Iron American Arawaks and getting information. And how they were putting out the information now is the same way we told them, do not do it like that, because it's not true. Don't do that. And they still ignored it, and they're still pushing it out in this way. And they're still, and I many times I told you guys, they will never stop using that 1739 treaty. And that 1739 treaty is exact, direct, and to the point of who they are. They are the militia of the British crown, of the English crown. They are the militia of the English crown. They are subjects to the crown. And now that they have, Anada Akongpong has a Moor chief, which is a part of the Moorish Science Temple, yeah, that is pushing the Moorish ideology. He is also not only subject to the Moroccan crown, but he is subject to the English crown, which are two partners in colonization all over the world. So he will never come out and tell you 100% truth of the history. And how, from my firsthand experience with his two members of his cabinet of his party, there's a lot of biasness against folks who are not identified as part of the Maroon communities. Now, when they speak of the rebellions of Morant Bay and the other rebellions that was going on, and that it was the Maroons that was squashing these rebellions, the rebellions was being held and kept by the Arawaks, Sam Sharp, Paul Bogle. Arawaks, Ahuacan, Ana Ahuacan, Maripori, Lokono. Okay? What a Maroon is: a creation of the crown, a militia that was being paid to track down Arawakan people that was running from slavery and to put them back into slavery. The Arawakan people that was rising up to rebel against the oppression, to fight back against slavery. The Arawakan people that was going throughout the Caribbean and the Americas to free a lot of the brothers and sisters. The Arawakan people who were also key members of the Seminoles. Okay? Because the Seminoles is, you got to understand, the Arawakan Empire expanded throughout the original areas of Florida, which goes up into the South Carolinas. Okay? And then over the years, they renamed these tribes, but they're all Arawaks. The lineage is Arawaks, no matter the name that they gave you now today. This is why they're trying to use the fabricated tales of the Maroons. You understand? This is why they're trying to use that. Okay? And it is important that you understand this and that you understand the historical context, all right, of this in its proper context. Give me 1 second here, folks. Okay. Because it is easy for you to hear a story that sounds good, just like how it was easy for you to fall for the fabricated fable of roots. Okay? It's important that we just don't take the word of what people are saying, or even the word of what I am saying. It is important that you actually go out and start doing the research and start asking the hard questions to these people. All right? Because anything that is being pushed by the mainstream media, being popularized also as a sexual icon now, you have to question it when the mainstream media is going hard to push something. All right? And I try not to get caught up too much within this whole Maroon thing, because there's bigger things going on in the Americas than just a set of people out of how many hundreds of thousands that are trying to push a fabricated narrative. All right? I don't want to use the word distraction, but just stay focused on the main issue. Okay? Not telling you take these people out your rear view mirror, but stay focused on the road ahead. You understand? Because the thing that's being pushed in the Caribbean with the jab and these fabricated things that's going on now still by the government is being pushed by a big corporation. All right. But that's something else for another time with the whole KFC hiring 800 to thousands of people and all that stuff. And that's a different story. But anyway, let's get into this. And we're going to break it down. Let me play the audio of this. And you guys let me know if you guys can hear this, okay? So this is from the Bridge 99 FM. This is former Prime Minister Bruce Golding. He was the one responsible for the capture of Dudus, and he's the one responsible for the genocide and the bombing of how many innocent people up in Spanish Town when they went for the so-called or supposed mob boss called Dudus, Jim Brown's stepson or adopted son. Okay. When they already knew who this man was, where this man was, all that violence need not had taken place. Because the world knows that the politicians of Jamaica are the ones that fund the mafia. And that when election time come around, they lean on the mob to make sure that the election goes their way. This is facts. Okay? It's not a secret. So when they were flying planes, they claimed that it was Jamaican planes flying over the communities in Spanish Town and dropping barrel bombs. But remember, it was U.S. military soldiers that was also on the land going for this man. All right? But it wasn't really him that they wanted. It was an access to something that is in Spanish Town that the U.S. corporation and the Chinese subsidiaries wanted access to. And that man was the blockage to that. But anyway, let's play this. Now let me know if you guys can hear this clear.
Welcome back. It's Jamaica Live. We're on Bridge 99. Maroon rights. Maroon, the status of the Maroons. That's what we're talking about today. And I'm very pleased to welcome as my first guest today the leader of the Akampong Maroons, Colonel Chief Richard Curry. Chief Curry, welcome to the program.
All right, so I'll pause it a little bit. Could you guys hear that? If the sound quality is good, press 1 and let me know. All right. And to everyone that's in the chat, I say welcome, Sister Cherokee. Welcome, Wildflower, All Out 2, Brother War. Honor, Chase Truths, honor to you. Welcome, everyone. All right, cool. Let's get on the way and start dissecting this conversation here.
Former Prime Minister Golding, thank you for having me, sir. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad we were able to get you. Now, you have been much in the news recently. The issues regarding the status and the rights of the Maroons, those are not new issues. They've been around for a long time. But since your elevation to as colonel, you have been pursuing those issues with renewed vigor. What precisely are you insisting on, and what's the approach that you see towards bringing the matter to some sort of satisfactory conclusion?
Thank you for that question, sir. All right. Well, let me start by saying, former Prime Minister Golding, that I know you're a very diplomatic individual, right? And the way you've carried yourself through politics, and I would also gather through life, has been maintaining, a balanced approach and, giving yourself the respect of information and time to process and make accurate decisions. Now, I've been asking for just that diplomacy, because what has been missing and lacking for all this time in Maroon history is diplomacy. It's almost as if the Maroons were just a memorabilia, and there's so much more context behind that. Why? Because the Constitution, which I heard you mention earlier, doesn't make any mention of Maroons. However, there's a clause that is inserted in the Constitution, Clause 4, which speaks to previous engagements and obligations, which would have been obligations of the British, which would have now passed to the government of Jamaica. That's, to us, is saying this treaty and this document that we have here is still being regarded and should be attended to. So diplomacy is the answer.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate the way in which you have framed that. Now, one of the things, and I'm not even so much making a suggestion, I'm just seeking to engage the discussion. One of the things that seem to, well, the bone of contention seems to be the claim to sovereignty, no?
Right.
And that has been challenged by lawyers. You know, the position people like Dr. Barnett and Michael Hilton have taken, Professor Bastiani, different from the position that, say, Bert Samuels has taken. But the Prime Minister, in his response to the position you have taken, was quite defiant. The question of sovereignty, it seemed to me, you know, that if we were able to find a way to sandpaper down that particular issue, then we may be able to get some traction on the others. Because if you look at the treaty, for example, where it says, it sets out the leadership succession of the Maroon, starting with Kodjo and then his various brothers. And it goes on to say that after the last brother dead, is the governor that will appoint the chief. That can't be sovereignty. If the treaty itself is giving the white man the power to decide who is to be the leader of the Maroon.
Right. All right. So let me explain that. So I heard you mention a couple of articles in the treaty, which I'd love to go back over a few of them for you and, you know, provide some clarity and context, which many Jamaicans and historians right through have missed, right? And I'm hoping that with this, it makes it a little bit clearer. So let me go through that clause.
Now, let's make this clear. They didn't miss it. They didn't miss it. What's going on is, just like with his what he called him now is Attorney General, and his what is the other one called? Whatever the cabinet positions that he gave Alex Amelkia. They want something to be there that's not there. The treaty just straight up outright point the Akongpong Maroons as traitors. Point them as not only traitors, but ones who are working for the British Crown. Not only one who are working for the British Crown, but one who were appointed positions by the Crown. So, like I said to you guys before, what he's doing and what they're trying to do is land theft. You have many communities outside of Maroon communities that has been up in those land areas before there was ever a Maroon, and those people still exist now today. So they're trying to use that treaty that they have with the British Crown to usurp those lands from those people and acting like that's not what they're trying to do. They're no better than the silver and gold miners that are mining up for the precious metals on those bauxites. They're no better than them. Okay? Literally, this is what they're doing. And this is why they're trying to use the ancestor of Nani, the descendants of Nani from Moortown, because Moortown is the flagship community of what they call Maroons. So if they can get that community under control under Curry's leadership with the hidden hand of those two behind him, because they have no credibility up there. So they took that 18-year-old little girl that they've been grooming from she's been like 12 years old. All right? And stuck themselves like a fly to a trap onto her grandfather and her mother, or maybe that's her father, her grandfather and her mother. Okay, because the grandfather, his mind is not there anymore like that. It's not clicking at 100. Okay, and the mother don't really know this information. She don't know it, and the daughter worse don't know it. But it's the daughter they want to run for Maroon chief up in Moortown because she doesn't know the information, and those two have a strong influence on her. So those two are going to be the ones that is going to be carrying out orders up there, not her. She wants to be a reggae artist. She don't want to be no chief. But because those two have no legitimacy up there, the people won't listen to them. So they waited for this man, which was a plan for this man to become a Kongpong new Maroon chief. And then through the way of the media of the hidden hand, push this man to a popular state in the eyes of the media. Yeah. Then now trying to use him to usurp the elections of the rest of the Maroon communities. Because in some Maroon communities, once you're chief for life. Unless you approach the council and make the council vote for an election to be held, which is what I had said to those two before I had fully grasped the concept that they were trying to usurp the people up there. I said to Alex, why don't you run for chief? You are a Moortown Maroon. Why don't you put it through to the council? You say that you have the ears of General Charles Aaron, right? Colonel Charles Aaron. You have his ear. Why don't the elder then run for chief? He says, oh, because the current chief now today drinks out of a skull cap and he's into voodoo, and they throw white powder on the graves and they let the spirits rise and they control these spirits and these things and so on and so. But the thing is that he has no legitimacy up there. His connection, from what I've been told from him, was through an uncle. Right? His dad is no longer down there. It's not even there. It's just like Buju has been inactive for years there and now come and want to play a part in the role of the elections. It don't work like that. You're not going to use your celebrity influence to try to get this 18-year-old little girl to be chief so that she could be a puppet for this man here. They didn't want to run. They want to stay behind the scenes. But they want to put this little girl here on front page and put her in danger's way. Okay? Understand what's happening here. Great usurpation. Now when Bruce Golden is laying it out to them, saying, well, the treaty says, well, it shall be passed on from Kwako, from Akongpong to Kwako, and so on and so. And then when the last brother dies, that's it. Now, after the last brother dies, it's now the British Crown takes over and shall name who shall be chief from time to time of the Maroon community. So even though he was voted in chief, he's not really chief unless the Queen of England says he's chief.
50, right? It says that Captain Kodjo shall during his life be chief.
Let's go back.
The position you have taken was quite defiant. The question of sovereignty, it seems to me, that if we were able to find a way to sandpaper down that particular issue, then we may be able to get some traction on the others. Because if you look at the treaty, for example, where it says, it sets out the leadership succession of the Maroon, starting with Kodjo and then his various brothers. And it goes on to say that after the last brother dead, is the governor that will appoint the chief. That can't be sovereignty. If the treaty itself is giving the white man the power to decide who is to be the leader of the Maroon.
Right. All right. So let me explain that. So I heard you mention a couple of articles in the treaty, which I'd love to go back over a few of them for you and, provide some clarity and context, which many Jamaicans and historians right through have missed, right? And I'm hoping that with this, it makes it a little bit clearer. So let me go through that clause you're talking, clause 15, right? It says that Captain Codger shall during his life be chief in command in Trelawney Town. As you said, it goes on after his decease. His brother Kompong, after his decease, his brother Johnny, and then Kofi, who shall be succeeded by Kwako. And after their demise, the governor or commander-in-chief for the time being shall appoint from time to time who he thinks fit for that command, meaning the command of the militia that would join the British to defend the island in the event that there was an attack.
Now, if you read the treaty, right, I'm going to leave that up to you now to do the research and go pull up the treaty. But all you got to do is type in 1738, 1739 Maroon Treaty. It will come up. All right, it will come up. If you read the treaty is literally letting you know that the Maroons are the militia. Okay? What he's trying to do, he's trying to downplay it like they're not the militia. Like it wasn't their job to run around and capture the Arawaks and enslave them. Like it wasn't their job to run around and quell and squash any rebellion going on by the Arawaks. Okay? Now, the reason why you don't see them speak on being Arawaks openly like that, they rarely use that word. And it's ever since they came into contact with I and Brother American Arawaks and Brother Aoua, they started 1 and 2 dropping the Arawak name into their documents. But then they're adding in the Moor name, the Moorish name, right? Then they're adding in the whole African thing. It doesn't work like that. The Jamaica Constitution, when it's speaking on when it's speaking on things that the Jamaica government or corporate government now today is supposed to fulfill from back then, from their previous predecessors to the people of the land. It is speaking of the Arawak people, nothing about Maroons. So if you sit here and still want to identify as a Maroon, you're saying then you are and part of the Jamaica government, because the Maroon militia was created by the Queen's crown, which then was the King's crown. You understand? So because they're so indoctrinated by the Moorish ideology and they are hidden hands of the Masonic world, okay, that they will give you fabricated stories and mixed in with some truths. And this is what they're doing. Their own personal beliefs away from facts is what they're pushing. Their own personal ideology away from facts is what they're pushing. Okay? The Maroons. And I cannot say all Maroons, because what is happening is when the Maroon title was being pushed around, those whom also, a lot of the tribes also, or communities that they're calling Maroon communities, those people weren't calling themselves that. It's like when they started pushing the whole Black and African identity on every dark-skinned and brown-skinned person they saw all over the world. Okay? In the 1970s, 1980s, mid-1990s, people in Jamaica was not calling themselves Black and African nothing. That's why when they was pushing Marcus Garvey down there, the schools weren't teaching Marcus Garvey, because Garvey was talking about going back to Africa, and Garvey never been to Africa. Garvey ancestors are not Africans. Okay? If there's any close kin connection that we have with anyone, it is the Negro Irish. And that goes for damn near all the original tribes of the Americas. Because when when they brought hundreds of thousands of the Irish here to colonize here, what they call the Black Irish, there was a rebellion, and a lot of them teamed with the Indians. This is where now you're going to have the war that took place in New York. Remember the whole 5 Points War? But they showed it like it was a whole bunch of Caucasian people fighting, right? To take over New York, the 5 Points of New York, Gangs of New York. That movie, which is based on a true story, replaced all those Caucasian faces with brown skin and dark skin faces. Okay? Those were Indians. Those were Indians and the colonizing Negroes fighting for control of New York. All right? But when all was said and done, that's when the hidden hand of the pale man came out into the public. And you see they all got pushed out. But then they created communities called lodges, Prince Hall Masons, these things. Moorish Science Temple, these things. And a lot of you folks who joined some of these societies didn't know this information at the time, but the deeper and deeper you got in there, you started learning this that I'm saying. Tell me I'm lying. But because you swore an oath, you cannot speak on this. Well, I swore no oath to no man. Okay? I don't serve two masters. I serve the Most High Creator. That is it. I take no knee and bend no knee to no man, and I kiss no man's ring. You understand that? So if any judgment shall be cast upon I, it shall be by the Most High. That is it. So people understand. The Maroons are the militia. They are. And this is why they stayed segregated from the rest of the people on the island for all these years. And I cannot say all of the Maroons. All right? Because there are Maroon brothers and sisters that we've spoken to that are not in agreement with this man, that are not in agreement with the other communities, that are saying damn near similar to what I'm saying right now today. But let's back it up a little bit and let's keep going.
Right to have missed, right? And I'm hoping that with this, it makes it a little bit clearer. So let me go through that clause you're talking, clause 15, right? It says that Captain Kodjo shall during his life be chief in command in Trelawney Town. As you said, it goes on after his decease. His brother Kompong, after his decease, his brother Johnny, and then Kofi, who shall be succeeded by Kwako. And after their demise, the governor or commander-in-chief for the time being shall appoint from time to time who he thinks fit for that command, meaning the command of the militia that would join the British to defend the island in the event that there was an attack. It is a total separate thing from saying they have the right to choose who the chief man is.
Now, who was the militia that joined the British to defend the island in case there was an attack? Who was attacking the British on the island if the British was the one waging war on you? You understand? The Spaniards came, waged war. The Moors of Spain, the dark-skinned people of Spain came and waged war. Then the dark-skinned people of Europe, the British Crown, came and waged war on the people of the Americas. So who will be the militia to go and back these people in case your lands, the island, or the rest of the Americas is being attacked? Attacked by who? Who is the militia? Who? What he's saying makes no sense. Because if there is a militia, these people came, and brought so much people that they said, okay, this regiment here, you guys stay here and live amongst the people. And when we're ready for you, you will be the militia. They didn't do that. So the militia then would have had to have been you. You were the militia. And this has been the rift between Maroon communities for hundreds of years now, because they said there's a traitor amongst them. And it goes back to Akongpong. And still are traitors today. You are the militia. This is why he was in King's house signing paperwork. This is why he's a form of a magistrate or judge under the parliament of the corporation. You understand? So he is the corporation that he's trying to claim sovereignty from. You cannot be a member of the corporation and claiming to be sovereign from them. What is that? One must be autonomous. Autonomy. Well, let's go. And you're gonna hear it. Let's back it up, and I'm gonna play it out. Fair use.
So I heard you mention a couple of articles in the treaty, which I'd love to go back over a few of them for you, and provide some clarity and context, which many Jamaicans and historians right through have missed, right? And I'm hoping that with this, it makes it a little bit clearer. So let me go through that clause you're talking, clause 15, right? It says that Captain Kodjo shall during his life be chief in command in Trelawney Town. As you said, it goes on after his decease. His brother Kompong, after his decease, his brother Johnny, and then Kofi, who shall be succeeded by Kwako. And after their demise, the governor or commander-in-chief for the time being shall appoint from time to time who he thinks fit for that command, meaning the command of the militia that would join the British to defend the island in the event that there was an attack. It is a total separate thing from saying they have the right to choose who the chief man is. The chief man is a separate individual and identity from the commander, who is the commander that takes battalion to join the British in force to defend the land.
Yeah, but
so that's the clarity.
Yeah, but well, you and I are going to disagree on that, because my argument would be that that question of commander in chief only applies if the island is engaged in some kind of war. But if it's not engaged in some kind of war, it's the governor, the king's houseman, the one who was living in Spanish Town.
Right.
That was the one who was going to appoint the leader of the Maroon. That is not sovereignty.
No, I mean, you do have your right to differ in the opinion, but it's clear in terms of what.
No, it is not opinion. It is literally what the treaty is saying. And even he said, in the times of war. So then again, the commander-in-chief, right? If that title is a title, or chief or commander is a title, yeah? Just like colonel or military titles are only supposed to be in operation during times of war. So when their ancestors had the title colonel and commander, yeah? Who were they in war against if they were treated with the British? Who were they in war against? The Arawaks, us. Their job was to quell the rebellions. Their job was to capture the runaway Arawakan slaves. You understand? And this is why they're always pushing African ideology on you, because they don't want you to know who you are. All these years you've been talking African, and Africa has never came to your rescue. Africa has only come when they wanted access to resources, seeds, food products, precious metals. This is the only time they have come. And they have not come out outright and spoken freedom for my people, because we are not their people. You understand? So, in times of war, and he's admitted that this is when these titles are given out. He's admitted that just thus so far. Okay? Now, which is a very interesting thing, because you hear what the former prime minister said. The titles commander-in-chief are only supposed to be given out in times of war. So why now is the United States president known as a commander-in-chief? And what is times of war? The war on COVID, the war on drugs, the war on poverty, the war on homelessness, the war on economical decline. Are you getting it now? Then when we're going into the physical warfare of guns and bombs, oh my, where they come in. This is why when they speak as in a separatist format away from the rest of the island people. But because they are very well educated in psychology and political science, they know that they need to gain your trust. They need to seem like they like you. They have to smile with you. They have to entertain you so that you can feel like it's an all-inclusive thing, but it's not. They only speak for what is called Maroon. They're not speaking for you. Okay? They're not speaking for the communities outside of a Akongpong. They're trying to take those lands, those communities outside of a Akongpong, which you're going to start hearing it now.
What it is saying, the Maroons were to join the British to defend the island in the event of an attack. We were talking about a time of war. Now, we arrived at this document to facilitate commerce and trade. You said it yourself. The plantations were suffering. The sugar itself was suffering, of which most of the British wealth in that time was depended on.
Colonel, I don't want us to sort of get stuck on this point because there's some other important issues that I'm sure you want to discuss and I want to discuss too. But on this point, if you are correct, then that clause 15 couldn't stop there. It would have to say after the last Kodjo brother dead. This is how the leadership of the Maroons will thereafter be determined. It never say anything like that. It don't say that the Maroons will elect their own leader.
Exactly.
No, but that wasn't a part of what this treaty is about. This treaty is about two separate entities agreeing at cessation of war first, and then two, how they then both operate within this land and defend it in the event of an invasion or some other nation that is rising from within the land.
All right.
Now, to squash all of this hibbly blue blah, to squash all of this, the fact that they call themselves Maroon, yeah? The fact that they call themselves Maroon, and I want you to pay attention, okay? Because those of us who identify as Indians or the First Nations people of the Americas, right? Those of us who are not identifying as Maroon or as anything else other than Indian, yeah? The fact that they call themselves Maroon, you're saying you're Maroon, but what about the Arawaks, who are the first people of that land? So what you are arguing about, what your dispute about is to be this sovereign state. You cannot be a sovereign state on another man's land? How, Sway? How is that possible? You cannot be a sovereign state on another man's land. Then first come, first serve is the Arawaks, those who identify as Arawakan, Ahuwakan, Ana Ahuwakan, Maripori Lokono people. Not you. You're Maroon. So you must go right up back on and eat the queen's skirt, blouse and skirt. You're Maroon. Go. And you're a Moor, so go back to Morocco. Go back to Morocco. Why are you here? Why are you here? What are you arguing for? What are you fighting for? Go home. Go back to your mommy, the queen, and go back to your daddy in Morocco. Go home. What are you fighting for?
That is exactly what this document is.
All right, discuss with me now. Let us say that we were able to kind of tone down the rhetoric, you know?
Yes.
Get into a sort of civil discussion.
Right.
Let us say that the government were to decide, look, the Maroons are part of our history. And
Right.
therefore, you know, there's no point in after 300 years now getting into a fight with them. So let us set up a structure, a framework. Let us appoint a team and they're going to sit down with the Maroons and they're going to iron out these issues and see if we can come to some sort of position where everybody would be happy.
Right.
If that kind of scenario were to emerge,
Yes.
a couple of questions I want to put to you.
Yes.
One, is there unanimity among the various Maroon communities as to what that new relationship with the Jamaican?
I had to stop it there because you see this man here asking these questions. He is no fool. He is no dummy. And he's being very strategic. And even though he's saying, well, you know, I don't really have the information or the knowledge, you know, he does have it. He was the former prime minister. He was privy to all this knowledge. So he knows the communities, the other communities that they call Maroon communities, that is not in agreement with this man. Especially on the telling of the history. You understand? So this is why he asked this question. Because this is what their Curry's cabinet goal is. Their goal is to usurp the elections of all the other Maroon communities and make Richard Curry the chief of all the communities using his popularity and using the popularity of Bojo. Do you understand? This is their plan. So if a man is chief of all the communities, that he's king. And they need to siphon Nani energy. If that little girl is truly a descendant of Nani, they need to siphon from that energy. And that's why they've latched themselves onto her. Whatever she wants, they try their best to give it because they know what they were planning on doing here henceforth right now and going on in the future. And they need her family to accomplish what they are going to accomplish because her family is prominent up in Moortown. So it will cause a rift, a split in Moortown. Even if the current chief, even if they do the election and the current chief wins now, it will still be a rift there. Do you understand? That is the goal. If we can't win, we still create the rift. Okay? And let's swoop in like we are the heroes. Let's keep going. Let's keep going.
If that kind of scenario were to emerge,
yes.
A couple of questions I want to put to you.
Yes.
One, is there unanimity among the various Maroon communities as to what that new relationship with the Jamaican state would look like? That's one. Mm-hmm. Two, is the question of sovereignty so riveted, so fixed, that is going to prevent any kind of movement on the whole issue of self-governance? Because you see, my thing is that you can have a community in Jamaica that within the framework of our laws and constitution has self-government, you know, has certain rights that are reflected, if not in the constitution, reflected in law. And Parliament could meet next week and pass a law to that.
What he's talking about is what the Maroons already are right now. He's talking about quasi-sovereignty. You understand? This man is no dummy. What he's saying. It's called quasi-sovereign. Okay? You still can self-govern your community, but at the end of the day, the people of King's House are still supreme rulers over you. They will very rarely intervene with your community ruling unless it's spilling out into the greater population of the corporation. They will have a treaty with you. That's the 1739 treaty. You understand? But at the end of the day, in key points, in key parts of your supposed governorship of your supposed sovereign community, they have say so. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Cannot get around it. So you are not sovereign. You're quasi-sovereign. You don't have autonomy. You don't have this. But we will very rarely interfere in your activities. You want to grow your weed? Go ahead, grow your weed. We're not going to come up there and interfere with it. But if that parcel of ganja leaves that community and comes down into the greater portion of the communities that we have 100% control over, now, once it leaves your community, we can easily go and grab it and take it for ours. You understand? Telling you.
Effect. But we're going to have to get over this business of sovereignty.
So the question I ask you, former Prime Minister, respectfully, what about the land?
No. I have no difficulty with the land, you know. I have no difficulty with the land.
Let me tell you how.
The only question, as far as I'm concerned, with the land is a couple of things. One, the boundaries of the land. Yeah. Because if I read the treaty and I understand it, the treaty basically left it up to the Maroons themselves to go work out the boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. So, but that too, I believe, is a situation where, you know, reasonable people can sit down, get some surveyors, track out the land.
Now, here's the problem here now, too. You say you're a Maroon, and that's what you push. You're not pushing Arawak, you're pushing Maroon. Okay? In the 1739 treaty, it doesn't mention Maroons. It doesn't mention anything, really, as far as identification of the people. Okay? This is why I say that treaty is a fabricated treaty. All right? Now, you'll see it mentioned Maroon one time in a bracket. Now, when you see that bracket around that word, it means that that word was never there. And whoever typed out the treaty added it there, but they put the bracket there because that bracket is the four corners rule. When you're in legal documents and in particular corporate documentations or specific type of historical documents, when you see that bracket there, it means that that word did not exist. That word was not there. Okay? Four corners rule. It doesn't exist. It's not there. All right? This thing is deep, people. And for those who don't know the information on this level and even levels beyond what I can also comprehend at the level that I am at, but I comprehend enough to know when I'm being tricked. You understand? Yes. So now speaking on the land and the surveyors, you are saying you're a Maroon. You're not saying you're Arawak. So you have no right to survey no land at all. And that's because they're quasi-sovereign. That's why the government ignores what they're saying and ignores their surveying and, we're marking our borders. You have no borders. None. A colonizing source cannot award you land on someone else's land when those people still exist. Those people are still there on the lands. And here you are trying to claim the whole thing. It's land grab. It's land theft. Okay? This is what it is. And because they've been making corporate connections within the marijuana industry, okay? They've been making corporate connections within the Moorish community with mineral deposits, okay? These are the things they have been doing. And the benefits coming from those, it's not going for the entire island or the entire archipelago, which are the 28 islands, or the rest of the Americas. It's only going towards them. Okay? Tricksters and scammers. Oh, why is he saying this? Because I dealt with them for about 3 years behind the scenes, ran GoFundMe's for them, created the West Indian Tribal Society website, and all these things that we were operating. So I'm not some Johnny come lately. I'm not some hater from off the street somewhere that don't know what he's talking about. A lot of the documentations and paperwork they got from American Arawaks and I. And they changed around their portions of the documents and took it as theirs. And the path that they're going down now is a path that we told them, do not go down this path. Do not. And when they realized that they couldn't get American Arawaks to bend to the separatist mindset, they wanted him gone. And when they realized that I wasn't bending to the separatist mindset and I would not vote out American Arawaks to be gone from what it is that we were planning on doing. After we helped them get the grow house, the marijuana grow house up and running in Moortown. Yeah? Alex know what I'm talking about. After we got them to get that up and running, that was to bring in income and income. That was to acquire land and help acquire land here in the States so that we could set up foundations for our brothers and sisters on the mainland and our brothers and sisters in the islands to have a place of refuge, people to represent them in times of any type of trouble going on. Documents, help them with their documentations, these things, and acquire more land to start building communities. And when that grow house got up and running, they stopped talking to us. They became more secretive and they started pulling away because they got what they wanted. That is the truth. And then they started showing Curry with all his many marijuana fields and these things. Okay? That is the truth. Let's go.
See, exactly. And in that respect, Colonel, you would have to also recognize what has been the practice over many, many years, right? So if you find a little piece of land that don't really fit into the 1,500 acres, but then that is land that have been an integral part of the Maroon community, don't quarrel over that, man. Just straighten that out, right? So I don't have a difficulty with that. The only concern I have about the land is, and I'd love you to talk to me on it. How do you reconcile it with the laws relating to titling and so on? For example, the land belongs to the Maroons, but is that collectively or is that individually? In other words, you are a Maroon. Do you have your own piece of land in the community? Or is it community land that you occupy? I don't know.
All right. Let me help you now. All right. So quite a few things you touched on there. So I hope I can retract, I can go back to and answer each properly.
Yeah,
now,
sure.
First and foremost, let's start out with the land. The land is owned communally. You occupy, you live on the land that it would have essentially been passed down to your family line. You occupy that space until you so desire not to anymore, or any of your successors choose not to occupy anymore. It reverts to the state. So essentially, Maroon land is communally owned, right? Now, when you talk about the territory, it says that they shall, this is thirdly of the treaty, that they shall enjoy and possess for themselves and posterity forever all the land situate and lying between Trelawney Town and the cockpits, which is cockpit country, to the amount of 1,500 acres bearing northwest from the said Trelawney town. So we can agree that the 1,500 acres is not in Trelawney town. It says bearing northwest from said Trelawney town. So the arguments of Maroons controlling 1,500 acres is totally debunked if you actually take time to read what this document here is saying.
But it's a 1,500, Colonel man.
No. Hold on.
It's 1,500.
No, and you're correct. It says 1,500, but let me read it again. If we know what Trelawney town looked like, not Trelawney the parish, Trelawney town was a precinct itself, right? Which included a compound, Flagstaff, Land of Look Behind, all of those districts.
Now, this is where the land theft is coming in. Why were they awarded 1,500 acres of land? They were awarded that land through the 1739 treaty for their role in what they were doing in the squashing of the rebellions, the capturing of runaway Indians. That's why they were awarded that land of 1,500 acres. Now, what he is doing, you cheeky bastard. What he is doing, what he's doing. Now, let me just put it out there. I have no personal animosity towards this man. I have no personal animosity towards him or any members of his cabinet. But I do have an issue with the agenda that they are pushing. And I will not stand by and watch it go on in silence. Now, let's speak in the general concept. Yeah? We're going to speak in the general concept. Because internationally, the Maroon name has been so popularized that when people speak of Maroon, people didn't even know that they were Maroons in Suriname, that they were Maroons in St. Lucia, that they were Maroons in Florida, right? The Seminoles. People didn't know this. They only knew Jamaica Maroons. This is a fact. That's all people knew. And Jamaica is the land of the Maroons, which means that every community within the 28 archipelago islands of what they call Jamaica on corporate paper, every community, all the communities that he's talking about going up towards the St. Elizabeth area, St. Anne, St. Catherine, St. Andrew, all of these communities were then, by the colonial concept, all Maroon communities. So what he's trying to do, you cheeky bastard. What he's trying to do is say that, well, even though the treaty said 1,500 acres, it's saying 1,500 acres west of, and then all the communities, all the other towns, even if they are not a part of what we understand as to be Maroons today, that all of that land is their land. But mind you, the first people are Arawaks. We are Arawaks. I am Arawak. Ahuwakan. Ana Ahuwakan. Maripori. Lokono. All falls back underneath the Arawak banner. Seminole. All falls back underneath the Arawakan banner. And there were some tribes that went extinct in Texas and Mexico that were slaughtered. Every woman, man, and child. Yeah? Take a look at this face. And the ancestors of this man played a role in that. And this man is still carrying out today the agenda of his ancestors then. because the communities outside of what they're identifying as a Kongpong or the Maroon community, those people have been there before the sovereign state of what they want to call themselves, the sovereign state of a Kongpong or a Kongpong, before there was ever an a Kongpong and a Captain Johnny. Those communities have been there before all of that, and they are still there. So what he's trying to do now is adding all those communities in that conquest of that treaty and claiming all of that. It's land theft. Let's back it up a little bit and play it back out.
Trelawney Town. So we can agree that the 1,500 acres is not in Trelawney Town. It says bearing northwest from said Trelawney Town. So the arguments of Maroons controlling 1,500 acres is totally debunked if you actually take time to read what this document here is saying.
But it's a 1,500, Colonel man.
No. Hold on.
It's a 1,500.
No, and you're correct. It says 1,500, but let me read it again. If we know what Trelawney Town looked like, not Trelawney the parish, Trelawney Town was a precinct itself, right? Which included a compound, Flagstaff.
There were many precincts, yes. Because even on my grandmother's birth certificate, my grandmother's home birth, but then they had to draft up a document and bring it down to the register office. And at the time on it says precinct. Right, I forgot what precinct it said. Even on my grandfather's birth certificate and on his death certificate. Okay, but it doesn't mean that they were all in agreement with this state of a Kongpong or this community of a Kongpong. You understand? In New York, you have Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, Manhattan, Staten Island, Long Island. Right? That is upstate New York, Catskills, Poughkeepsie, Newburgh, Kingston, Bimington, Buffalo. All of that is New York. Okay? But it doesn't mean that Buffalo is in agreement with Brooklyn that, hey, we want to be underneath your Brooklyn banner. You understand? So all of that would be precincts of New York, all those communities. And within those precincts, they have their own individual communities. You understand? So what he's doing, he's lumping all of that in one and claiming all of that. Because majority of those people here now today do not comprehend the paperwork of what he's actually doing. It's land theft. It is not to save the land from mining or none of that, because those very same people that he's claiming to want to save the land from mining and when he makes it or expand in the marijuana business that he wants to expand in, he's going to be rubbing elbows back with those very same fucking people.
Land of look behind all of those districts would have been part of Trelawney Town. Now, Trelawney Town was within cockpit country, right? So when it says they live on lands situated and lying between Trelawney Town, you're talking one parcel.
Now, the reason why he's talking about cockpit country now, right? Because what they're calling a Kongpong, that small little area, right? All of that is all of what he's mentioning is the cockpits. Now, I believe in there's either the Treaty of 1739 or there's other documentations out there before and after that treaty that describes it as the cockpit. Yeah. But when they created their a Kongpong community, that's that 1,500 acres, right? Out of the entire cockpit that was awarded to them. That is theirs. That 1,500 acres, which is now called a Kongpong. And they changed the name too. And with the fact that they've changed the name and never updated the record within within a period of time. So if they even did that now, yeah, and updated the record or so on and so to the changing of the name to a Kongpong, yeah, it's still diverted from the original treaty that they have. Okay? Let's go.
Of land here, and the cockpits, second parcel of land here, to the amount which means including 1,500 acres bearing northwest from the said
you're gonna have a difficulty there because your idea of what was given seemed to be very elastic. My idea of it is that it was very specific. If I say I'm going to sell you 100 acres of land between Halfway Tree and Crossroads, you can't go capture the whole of Halfway Tree to Crossroads. We have to agree. We have to agree.
It is capture land. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're attempting to do. So so for our brothers and sisters here on the mainland, what capture land means is I could have a house and say I went abroad, but I left my children in that house. And you who are not from the community come into the community and you chase out my children out of that house and you took the house and the land. You captured it. This is where capture the flag comes in, because that's the representation of capture the flag. When you capture another man's flag, you capture his land. Because the flag is the representation of the house. The house is built upon the land. So if you captured the house, you captured the land. Hence, capture the flag. You understand? So, he's been called out. This is exactly what they're doing. And they will never want to push it like that in the eyes of the public. No, they always say, no, that's not what we're doing. But if you comprehend the documentations, the paperwork, if you comprehend the science behind what it is that they're pushing, you're going to see that that is what they're doing. And this is why I said in the last stream that I did, they're playing the long game. You understand? It is the long game that they are playing. And even though, do not let popularity overcloud your judgment. Do not let, because a man is popular and a man is backed by a popular music artist, that means something when it comes to true freedom and true gaining of rights. You understand? That's a part of the trick by these societies to put you in a false sense of hope and relaxation while they're pulling the rug from underneath you. You ever seen a table filled with dishes? Huh? A table filled with plates and champagne glass, and it has the and it's on top of the tablecloth, and they pull the tablecloth from underneath all those dishes. And not one of them spill, not one of them break, not one of them move, clean right out underneath. That's what they're doing to you. And then when they're done, they're going to use that same cloth and cover your ass, cover your head, cover your face. You will no longer have an identity. Because when he is done, you're going to be in control of the Islamic State. Hence, this is why he's in league with that Moorish dude that looks like a Syrian. You understand? Let's keep going. It is land theft. It is capture land. That's what they're doing.
Which part between Halfway Tree and Crossroads is the 100 acres that you're going to have a difficulty there, because your idea of what was given seemed to be very elastic. My idea of it is that it was very specific. If I say I'm going to sell you 100 acres of land between Halfway Tree and Crossroads, you can't go capture the whole of Halfway Tree to Crossroads.
Greetings, Lacona. Greetings.
We have to agree. Which part between Halfway Tree and Crossroads is the 100 acres that you are to get?
Okay.
So we get on the ground, and you may say, well, You know, I've been occupying this piece of arbitrary to crossroads for 100 years, so this must be in it. So we say, all right, this must be in it. Make us see how the 100 going to line up. No, follow me.
With all
All right, all right.
You know, we've gone a length at that discussion, and I mean, you know, we're pretty certain and with, you know, concrete evidence of what this document is portraying exactly, is outlining the domicile of the Maroons.
My suggestion to you, and I'm being presumptuous, yes, because you know more about the Maroon history than I will ever live to learn. But my suggestion to you, presumptuous as it is,
yes,
you can't ride the horse two ways, right? If you are holding up the treaty and say, listen, this is what the treaty say. It said we shall have control in posterity. It says this is what we shall do. This is the rights that the treaty give us. And then when the treaty said 1,500 acres, they said, no, is that really 1,500? You know, it's enough more than that. You're going to run into some trouble.
But is that running into trouble, sir, for articulating the document that my ancestors have handed down to us? Is that correct to judge me for being able to identify and interpret a document that my ancestors had left? This document is very clear. I mean, the problem is that we've encountered in the last year in Jamaica particularly is the level of, I don't want to make it seem as if I'm being disrespectful, but I'm being frank, is that the competence as it relates to international law and treaty law is not really there. And then we have many persons who have had their input. They haven't taken time out to understand other interpretations and readings.
The many persons that he's speaking of is over here. And then when he's speaking on before, he's speaking on the government, yeah? But it's not that they don't have the knowledge or the understanding of international law. They have it. It's just that what you're doing it wrong. And when you're a snake, you get but so far. Okay? You have snakes in your garden, sir. And you, sir, are deceptive also as well. And because they know what you're doing, yeah, and because you are of their house as well, they are putting you in check. So you'll be here another 50 years, still trying to fight this fight of this so-called sovereign state. But as long as there's folks out there like I that comprehend what it is that you and the snakes in your garden are doing, sir, then you will always have a fight. But when you come in truth, when you come correct, when you stand as an upright man, righteousness, honor, then those gatekeepers, as you are a gatekeeper, sir, shall have no choice but to open the gate and step to the side for the rightful heirs. But you do not identify as the rightful heir, sir. You identify as a Maroon. You identify as a Moor, which it states on your Instagram page, MOOR. Okay, and you can say it's an acronym. All you want, but it's in the Moorish colors. So you are a deceiver, sir, of the Islamic State. Sir, your right and your left hands are Jesuits, or claim to be former Jesuits who are now of the Islamic State. Sir. So what you are trying to do is capture the first people's land for the Islamic State. And this is why within your fraternity of Shriners, Elks, Masons, Moors, there's always a separation, a divide between the Christians, the Catholics, the Jesuits, and the Islamic State when it comes to the battle and fight for lands that is not theirs. So you will always have oppositions even in your own house, sir. That is the truth. That is the reality of it. Until you fully come home into your ancestral rightful identity. I don't care if you have 10 million mixed people in your ancestry. The fact is, these lands, these Americas are American Indian lands, and what the first people of these lands are. If you want to honor, if you have African ancestry, if you have Moorish ancestry from Spain or Morocco, you go to Africa, you go to Spain, you go to Morocco and honor that side. But while you are here on these lands of the Americas, you will and shall 100% honor the ancestors of the Americas and not put them in a box and bury them for some agenda of a corrupt house. Sir, you will always have a fight. And the war is yet to come. Sir.
We have documents, right, to support this thing, to make us not sound crazy. But people still come off making us seem like we're crazy and we're talking something that doesn't exist.
How do you...
Honor, Copper, honor.
Let me tell you, in 1962, what has happened when Jamaica approached the Queen for independence, a big void was left in that the Maroons weren't informed, the Maroons weren't contacted. And that was evident in findings that we've come across in direct mails and letters from members of parliament in the House of Commons asking of Bustamante in his arrival, what is the position of the Maroons now and what is their status likely to be after? He went on further after Bustamante left in another writing to say, did not the good man hear my questions? I will make a note. The fact is we do not want to challenge the Maroons on the situation to have them go back to the Queen over something that could be amicably resolved. Now, Jamaica is at a point where
Now, in 1962, Jamaica did that. Let me rephrase that. The rightful heirs of the land, the Arawakan people did not run to the English crown for independence. Independence from who? We are a free people. We were the ones controlling our farmlands and our houses at the time. We just had militia in our waters that was not supposed to be in our waters because of help of his people. Okay? So when we wanted to commerce freely on the waters, we were having hard times because of the work that his ancestors put in to help the colonizer gain a foothold on the land. So we didn't run to the Queen for independence. What they were doing, they were solidifying their corporation to make a public overview. Okay? 1 second, you guys. Okay, so because what was going on was one set of the corporation was coming out public and they were trying to push out the other set, which is his people. Yeah? So they drafted up the 1962 Constitution, which is a corporate document. It is a corporate charter. It is a trust document. And for the business-minded people who comprehend trust and trust law, you know what kind of document it is. And they drafted it up. And because they needed a particular amount of signatures of the people, they tricked the people to think that it was something that it was not. And gave these people 3 weeks to come and speak either for or against the document and sign on if they want it or not. 3 weeks where not even 2/4 or 3/4 of the island people could make it, because there were some that was living, again, it's 28 islands. It's an archipelago of 28, but it's really more than that. But we're not going to get into that. Let's stick with the 28 right now. There were people on other islands that was living, that had to travel by boat, that could not make it over. There was people up in the mountains that didn't have cars, was by donkey or horse, buggy, that could not make it down from the country within that time frame. Okay? And what the folks of King's House did, they drafted up that document and they flew over to England to go get it signed. It wasn't even signed on the soil of Jamaica, but they called Jamaica on corporate paper. So there is no Jamaica country. There is no Jamaica land. King's House is called Jamaica. It has an address. When you go on the Securities Exchange Commission website, King's House is Jamaica. Jamaica is a business. It is a corporation. The land, the people are Arawaks. The land is Jamaica. That is totally different from the corporation. Why am I saying that? Why is this important? Because you need not know recognition from the Jamaica Corporation, because they already identify you as West Indian. And why do they identify you as West Indian? It doesn't mean that you are a Caribbean person, you are an island person. The Americas, North, South, Central, all aspects of the Americas, is the Western Hemisphere. So, people on the mainland, people in the islands, you are American Indian. But because these folks here are subsidiaries of the corporation that they drafted up in 1739 and before that, they just made it public in 1962 that the corporation exists. Okay? Stole millions of acres of land. And this is what he is trying to do by forming or trying to form the sovereign state of a compound. And that's why he was mentioning all those precincts and districts, because he's trying to do the same thing, because they were boxed out on many levels from the 1962 trust document called a Constitution, signed off by the Queen of England. So it wasn't that the people of the island were seeking independence. That document was a false sense of hope to quell or squash any rebellion that was coming, because we were known to kill foreigners and push them off the island. There's been many rebellions against the Chinese, especially in the 1900s, by our people. Their job is to stop those rebellions. And they were boxed out of getting a major percentage of that trust document called a Constitution. And this is why every year or so the government gives them money. They're paid. They're given money. Now, what the chiefs of those tribes or those communities do with that money, that's with the people within the community business. If your chief was stealing the money, you should have handled it and dealt with it. But they are given money. This is why they're given tourist attraction sites to run in their communities. It's no different from the reservations here on the mainland. No difference. Okay? None whatsoever. Understand this, people. Let's keep going.
Members of the British House of Commons.
Yeah.
Did they raise those considerations in 1944 when a new constitution was delivered? Did they raise it with Lord Moyne, who came here to lay the groundwork for that new constitution, or was it only raised in 62? I remember, the leader who presided over the negotiations for the constitution wasn't Buster, it was Norman Manley.
Right. The questions were directed at Buster Manley, though, you know. I'm saying that what we have found is that there was some amount of contact and discussion that Arthur...
Now, let me make this clear. You need not recognition from no one around the world, because you already recognize. When they say West Indian, they're not just talking about the Caribbean islands. You understand? It's been you all these years that's been preparing your documentations, have been jotting down certain things in the documents wrong. You already recognize when the Coolie people come over from India, they are recognized as East Indians, yes? Yes or no? They're recognized as East Indians. They are called East Indians, even though they are not. The Sentinel Island peoples and the Jawa peoples are the East Indians. But that's a different story. But anyway, they're recognized as East Indians, yes? And they make their trip over to where? Here, which is the West. And they make their trip over here to the West, the home of what? West Indians. So when you are putting down Moorish American Indian, Moorish American Cherokee, more what else? What else was it that they had put in their document? There's something else. But you put all this stuff down and you just put an American, you're a West Indian. And this is why a lot of the other platforms that was trying to make fun of the whole West Indian thing and this and that, y'all learned. And y'all gotta choke on y'all words. A lot of y'all started recognizing the truth. And that it was as simple as that. Proper identification of how you identify yourself. So a lot of the folks who were going through Panama to go through Mexico to even come here, when even the Haitians that they turned down at the border of Mexico that disappeared, no one knows where those Haitians are to this very day. Those Haitians didn't have to do that. Because even in that document and the American and the United States federal constitution, those Haitians have all right to travel freely to and from the mainland back to the islands without being accosted because they are American Indians. They are West Indians, Indians of the Western Hemisphere. So the brothers and sisters who are down in the deep South and are down in Mexico and Texas and these places who are not on the reservation, you are of the Western Hemisphere. You are West Indians. You need not to marry for papers and these things. What has been going on, the corporations, the Federal Corporation of the United States and its subsidiary, the Jamaica Corporation, has been creating documentations to mislead you. So when you sign up those passport documentations and these things, and you do not know how to correct the record or approach them on correcting the record to properly identify you, to be separate from the corporation, then you are identifying yourself as corporate property. You understand? Which now they have all say so over you and where you can and cannot go. That is ethnocide and paper genocide. This is why when they were creating their Maroon IDs, they was only creating it for themselves, not the rest of the people on the island. Only for themselves. Okay? Let's go.
Have taken place then that
Let's back it up a little bit.
it was important enough for it
Let's
to be
back it up,
made
back it up.
is that there was some amount of content in another writing to say, did not the good man hear my questions? I will make up a note. The fact is we do not want to challenge the Maroons on the situation to have them go back to the Queen over something that could be amicably resolved. Now Jamaica is at that point where
did those members of the British House of Commons,
yeah,
did they raise those considerations in 1944 when a new constitution was delivered? Did they raise it with Lord Moyne, who came here to lay the groundwork for that new constitution, or was it only raised in 62? I remember,
No, you know what he said? Did they raise that consideration in 1944 for a new constitution? That means there was a constitution before the 1962 constitution. Now, when you go back into what was it? Is it 1679 or into 1773? There's a constitution. I think it's 1732 or 1679 or 1679. There's a constitution, which is yes, there's a constitution before the 1962 Constitution. But you notice he's not talking about that. But you see how Bruce took him back to at least 1944? because he wasn't going back to that. He was on 1962 and 1962, but there was a constitution before that. There's many constitutions before that 1962 constitution, but the 1962 constitutions, when they came out publicly to the world, and what the Jamaica government has been doing has been burying those old constitutional documents, especially when you put Edward Siaga at the time in charge of your departments of records. He destroyed a lot of information. And now what has been going on through the funding from the UN and the George Soros Foundation, these so-called Johnny-come-lately Indians and their organizations and people who are totally not Indians have been getting political positions in our houses of parliaments, political positions in our, in these departments of science and genealogy, archaeology, and they've been tampering with the records. Then they created, or now is pushing, this gene editing technology. Pay attention. This thing is deep. So the war has never stopped. You are still in a war. It's just on a different plane and on a different level that you have to start teaching yourself to comprehend, and your children. It transcends beyond the physical world. You understand? Because now it's going back to the mind. The mind is connected to the soul, the spiritual. Okay? Your energy, frequency. All right?
So the leader who presided over the negotiations for the Constitution wasn't Buster, it was Norman Manley.
Right. The questions were directed at Bustamante, though. You know, I'm saying that what we have found is that there was some amount of contact and discussion that ought to have taken place then that didn't. It was important enough for it to be made, put on
Honor, Jaguar.
Right, that this was an objection and that is to be noted because it would be source for future contention. Where are we today? We're in a serious contention because, again, we're at a point of Jamaica moving to a republic status, which is great. We are for that. But what does it then mean? Because up until this date, there's been no attention paid respectfully to this document and what it stands for. We've had the British High Commissioner come here 2 times, back to back.
How do we
reaffirm that this document still stands? So how do we move forward?
How do we
have to, yes.
How do we reconcile the sovereignty claim with the authority of the government? For example, okay. Let us say a man down in Magati kill another man and him run into Maroon into a compound.
Here we go.
Can the police enter a compound to apprehend that man, or have to get permission? Or they have to get permission?
Let me read this for you. 9thly, that if any Negro shall hereafter run away from their matters or owners and shall fall into Captain Cudjoe's hands, they shall immediately be sent back to the chief magistrate. You notice it didn't say plantation. These were criminals.
No. Who to say these were criminals? And it is that thought process right there. Yo, I see why they didn't introduce me to this man and let me interview this man, right? Because I would have tore you apart. I would have. If the minute you open your mouth and I sense the bull, I would have. Now, that brief part that they just read was the 1739 treaty that they signed. You understand? Pay attention. The 1739 treaty, that part that was just read, was the 1739 treaty that they signed with the English crown. So you're telling me that an Indian that kills a colonizer for enslaving him, raping his wife, taking his children, probably taking his manhood, taking his land, his life, his longevity, and he runs up to the mountains, you say, well, he's a criminal, and you throw him back to the wolves. Well, the jackals. You throw him back, which in that treaty, they get paid 30 pieces of silver to do so. They're a traitor. And he still has that mindset today. You hear him? No, because they are criminals. We're speaking, and now I spoke in the terms of how I spoke, is back into the era of 1739. They're trying to speak in the era of now today. So now let's go to the era of now today. If a man's soul commits a crime, a murder, right, in today's era, and runs up into a kongpong, they are to return that person back to the magistrate's office. And the reason being that they are to do that is because they are a branch of the corporation, and the Maroon chief serves as a type of magistrate for King's House. Okay? Now, if a Maroon kills another Maroon on Maroon, what they call in Maroon lands, in Maroon community, yeah, then the corporate government also has say-so over how that person is punished. So they are quasi-sovereign. They have no autonomy. Okay? Yo, Bruce is Bruce is very intelligent. Bruce is picking him apart. Let's keep going.
Chief magistrate or the next parish where they were taken.
Answer my question.
So let me say this to you.
Because I'm not talking about a slave that run away. I'm talking about a man who has committed a crime.
Hold on, he's a fugitive.
Yeah, what Bruce said. I'm not talking about a slave. That's why I spoke first in the past tense, and I came now into the current state, in the present state now today. Okay, to cover all the grounds. Cover all the grounds.
He's a fugitive. So, of course, just like in international arrangements and diplomatic engagements where countries and nations have extradition clauses and extradition treaties, this is no different from what that is. So if there's a criminal that comes into the state or into the state of a compound, and we find that person to be culpable and is a wanted person, then by all means.
So you have to find the person culpable.
No, if it is
I'm saying. So what you're saying is What you're saying
is wanted for a crime, right? If he's wanted for a crime, right? Then he has to. If he's here and hiding out, we cannot provide safety for criminals. We cannot stand for lawlessness. That's not what we're built on.
What would happen
in the island?
So what would happen?
What would happen?
Now you see what I just said? They can't make the decision and say, well, you know what? We don't think this man is guilty, so you can't get him. Because they've signed that document. They have to bring him back. You understand? Or else they know the Jamaica military is foot to face to them. Even though you see them in pictures posed up with some members of look like the Constable Police Force, and they blotted out their faces, trying to hide their faces. You understand? But that's again the level of corruption, right? Because you have folks from the Maroon community who's a part of the military, who's a part of the police force, who's a part of the House of Parliament. Okay? It's just that these little minks here that's trying to play wise aren't wise. Yeah? And when they're sitting down, so yeah, this is the street musician sitting down in front of his grand wizard. And the grand wizard is tactically asking him specific questions, which he's stumbling and bumbling over. You understand? Let's just back it up. Let's back it up.
National arrangements and diplomatic engagements where countries and nations have extradition clauses and extradition treaties. This is no.
Let's bring it back.
With the authority of the government. For example,
okay.
Let us say a man down in Magati kill another man and him run into Maroon into a compound to go hide out. Can the police enter a compound to apprehend that man, or am I forget permission? Or they have to get permission?
Let me read this for you. Ninthly, that if any Negro shall hereafter run away from their matters or owners, and shall fall into Captain Cudjoe's hands, they shall immediately be sent back to the chief magistrate. You notice it didn't say plantation. These were criminals. Chief magistrate, or the next parish where they were taken.
Answer my question.
So let me say this to you.
Because I'm not talking about a slave that run away. I'm talking about...
Yo, he could read that document 10 million times. Due to the fact that in that document, it also says that they're supposed to wait hand on foot on the king or the governor to return. Okay? They are supposed to wait upon him. All right? That means that the supreme overseer, the supreme custodian of their Maroon community is the queen and her sons and her nephews and her grandchildren. You understand? So it means since the queen is the head of the Jamaica Corporation, the Jamaica police and military can run up into Akongpong any blood clot time they want. Anytime they want. They need not no permission from him. None. Zip, zilch, nada. The reason why they don't outright violate them is to keep some form of camaraderie. But no, they've been getting ahead of their bridges. Being put in check.
About that man who has committed a crime.
Hold on, he's a fugitive. So of course, just like in international arrangements and diplomatic engagements where countries and nations have extradition clauses and extradition treaties, this is no different from what that is. So if there's a criminal that comes into the state or into the state of a compound, and we find that person to be culpable and is a wanted person, then by all means.
So you have to find the person culpable.
No, if it is
no. I'm saying. So what you're saying is
no.
What you're saying
is wanted for a crime, right? If he's wanted for a crime, right? Then he has to. If he's here and hiding out, we cannot provide safety for criminals. We cannot stand for lawlessness. That's not what we're built on.
What would happen
in the island?
So what would happen?
What would happen is we would make contact with the police if there's a warrant out for that person. I'm asking. I want a specific answer from you, Colonel. Because I mean, go ahead.
You're sharp.
Go ahead.
When the police vehicles head into a compound because them have information that the man is in there, what happens when they get to the perimeter of a compound? Are you saying that they have no right to come in there to go hunt down the man? They must wait for you to hand him over, or they must apply for extradition?
I did not say that. What I'm saying is, as in the past, where there was an engagement and agreement in place as to how you handle these matters, right now we informally have one in place where if there is a criminal here, we would expect, as it has been in the past, that the police or the head of the division would make contact with the chief man or the colonel, right, at that time to say, look, there's a man in your community, he's wanted for crimes, and we are coming to get him, or we want you to hand him over. It was either or either. That was something that was done in past. It is not something new. And we don't have a formal agreement now, but you can go and ask the police. I've been working directly with law enforcement from the Magat.
No. And the reason why they come and say, hey, there's a man up there, we are coming to get him, or you can hand him over. It's because of a form of camaraderie. You understand? You're not just gonna just run up in the hey, you know, it's a form of like camaraderie. It's just to not escalate a situation, but they don't have to respect that. They could go up in there and just go get who they want, if they want, whenever they want. They can. Okay? That's why he has not answered the question. He can't answer the question. So him saying, well, we have worked with the police, that don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. You can work with the police 10 million times. It's just to keep a situation from getting too hostile or create hostile situations. That's why. But do they have to notify you? No, they don't. They could just go up there and go get who they want because you are under the crown's rulership. And the constable force is under the crown. That's who the constable force answers to. Is the crown. Not you. And you answer to the crown. So this is why it is important that family, that you guys know the history, know the legal portions of this thing, know the wording, comprehend what these words actually mean in these documents, what it is saying, or else you're going to have charlatans like this and the members of his cabinet that are going to try to convince you otherwise. Okay? Let's keep going.
And silo divisions in ensuring that there's proper accordance with laws within the territory and expanding geographic.
And what you're saying is that protocol must be formalized.
Of course, nothing strange there.
Tell me now. I mean, do the Maroons collect taxes from their people?
No, we don't. Right?
So tell me now, if you're a sovereign state and you preserve all of those rights, what relationship would you have with the budget that the government passes in God knows every April?
All right. Look at it this way. All right. Since the claim is that the Jamaican, what we're saying is that Maroons are Jamaican, right? We have Jamaican instruments, passports, IDs, and Maroons vote in the elections. But when we turn and look in the communities, the Maroon communities, not just a compound, look at all the Maroon communities. What is really being done, right? We're being used and propped up for votes for political reasons. We have no water in our community, former Prime Minister. We provide 40% of Jamaica's fresh water. We have no running water, and we're praised and highlighted every year.
Fine.
Now, let's answer that. Just like the Native Americans, right? The children of the colonial forces that has mixed in with our people are under reservations and they don't pay taxes. They are awarded every year charitable fundings. Okay? And that funding, and they are awarded to have casinos and these type of businesses so that they can financially take care of their communities by their own means. But also the corporation cuts them a check every year, a fat one, just like the Maroons are cut a check every year. So this is where I say it depends on the corruption of the chief and the chief council and particular key members of said community, because that money does go to the community. Okay, it does go into the hands of the chief. But what are they doing with it? All the years of receiving these fundings, and you have not built a running water supply. That is because of a corrupted chief. You understand? That is where have the money been going? Who are the most prominent families that is living almost luxurious in those areas? Where have the money been going? Whose families are abroad, overseas, got houses overseas and abroad, traveling abroad, living a nice life? Where have the money been going? Or should I back it up? Rewind and come again. So it's not like they weren't getting the money. They were getting the money. So if the people in the community knows that these folks are getting the money to take care of the community, and these people have not been putting the money towards the community, it is your fault why you don't have a running water supply. It is your fault why your bridges are not holding. It is your fault why your roads are giving out. It is your fault why they were leaving abandoned mining equipment in your area. You took no action. Like I said, one said, well, the chief does voodoo and does Orbi and they are afraid. It is your lack of will to fight, your fear, and your compliance in the corruption that has been going on for years. But you, sir, are no different from those chiefs of old. You are just a new face with a new way of deception, because you know that majority of the people are uneducated. That's all. That is all. You, sir. 'Tis your fault. All the years you were getting the funding from the UN. All the years you was getting a check cut through the Jamaica Corporation. What have you been doing with it? Why there were no schools built within those communities? Libraries built within those communities? Why? Any form of constructive businesses built within those communities. Instead, you have the Chinese them coming up in those territories, running out the local shop owners out of business. And these so-called people allowing them to come up in the specific areas to build businesses, to run more of our people out of businesses, putting them in poverty. Wake up, people.
I'm not suggesting that the government must start the committee. What I want to pin it down though, I want to pin it down because I see where your mind is. So for example,
yeah.
We get a lot of aid from America, no?
Yes.
And from England.
Yeah.
To help with our schools or to help with our hospitals. So in a sense, what you're saying is that the sovereign accompang, what would be expected, the Jamaica government, same way like how America gives Jamaica aid. We're a sovereign country, they're a sovereign country. That the Jamaican government would provide aid. Not an entitlement, because we can't command, we can't compel America to give us nothing. But we said to them, boy, we need help, and they help us. Is that the position that you're putting up a compound in? Where it's not an entitlement.
Yes.
But it's an expectation.
Listen, I humbly submit that forever what we've been looking for is understanding what this relationship is on paper, because it doesn't exist. The fact is, we have been operating in a very grey space, which has caused a lot of contention and problems. The situation with the police last year, one example. Police really don't know how to operate when they come into the space or interact with the colonial and his administration. Now, it's a similar thing in the US, as you mentioned earlier, where the US government has certain recognition of tribal nations and their rights and privileges and their lands. I want you to do a little research for me. I know you like to do researches as well. There's a document called Concurrent Resolution 331, right, which relates to how the Indian rights were brought into constitutional effect in the United States, which galvanized the relationship that is there today. Now, is it perfect? No, it might not be perfect. But guess what? There are nations of people out there living in their autonomous regions and realizing in their true potential, their tribal realities as indigenous and First Nation peoples. Now, you said...
But he don't identify as Indian. He identifies as more and Maroon, like I've been saying again. And if you go through the federal constitution, it speaks of the Indian off of the reservation in their Bill of Rights and their amendments, their documentations. It speaks of the Indian off of the reservation and the independent Indian off of the reservation. You understand? Because the reservation Indian is a quasi-sovereign. and a subsidiary of the corporation, but the Indian off of the reservation and the independent Indian has his full on-out autonomy. Big difference. It's just for him to claim it, for him to act upon that autonomy, for him to let it be known who he is. But because majority of the Indians off of the reservation has been going to these colonial schools and have been brainwashed to believe that he's a runaway slave from Africa, and Africa has not come to fight for your freedom. Never have, never will. He identifies himself as a black man, when by law, black means civilis mortus, means dead, a dead entity. He identifies himself as corporate property. And this is why, even though the corporation is so corrupt, the corporation gives you escape ways to where you can go and amend the record. Correct the record. Let them know you are here. You still exist. You are the Indian off of the reservation. You are the independent Indian. You let them know you are not black. You are not African. You are not African American. You are not Afro-Caribbean. You are not Afro-Latina. You are not Afro-Latino. You are Indian. And this is why the CDC did release their racial profiling list that they released. And on it, it mentions Indian. Many different types of Indian, and then it just says Indian. And then it try to mislead you with the West African and so on and so on, black. You must understand what these words mean when they say black. It's not an identification of people or nation. It is a corporate term that means civilis mortus, dead at law. Okay? And you cannot be an African American. You understand? You gotta understand where these words came from, why these words were created. Okay? So he can mention 10 million documents. I told you, they just make shit difficult for themselves. It's right there, clear as day in plain sight in front of you. And if those two little minks was genuine and paying attention and not trying to be sneaky and deceptive, they would have seen this. But because they want to include all the races of the world, but all the races of the world ain't including you. Or they're saying in Ukraine, let's fight for the freedom of Ukrainian people and let's give us all this donation money so we could also share it with our black brothers and sisters in America and Jamaica. No, they're not. That's the time I hear anything about Ukraine, I switch my channel or I turn off the goddamn television. Don't want to hear that shit. We have our own fight. I'm not sitting here saying screw the other side of your ancestry, but if you want to celebrate or speak on the other side of your ancestry, go where they came from. But while you are here in America, you honor the spirits of the American ancestors that are being trampled upon each and every single day. You honor their spirit. You honor the fight that they fought for you to still be here right now, for I to still be here speaking to you, for him to still be here with his corrupt ass mindset. You understand? But they want to do an all-inclusive documents. It doesn't work like that. You are but a speck in the cosmic universe. Period. Let's go.
Kinda, which is Hebrew Ashanti, or one family. This is the recognition that there's a separateness on the island, but together we are one family. Now, without the recognition, said Kinda.
Now, I told you, they'll always go back to the whole African thing. Now, the Ashanti, yeah, the people who they're calling Ashanti right now in Africa, who are really not, but that's a different story for another time. The people who are there, who they are calling Ashanti in Africa, they were slave captures. They enslaved their own people. They went into all those other tribes that they fought, they slaughtered, and they enslaved those people, and they sold those slaves up and down through the Barbary coast. Do you understand? Okay? This is how they came into their riches. They stole lands. They slaughtered other tribes, and they stole their gold. This is why you always see them wearing all this gold and all that thing. Okay? This is the true history of them. They sold slaves to the East Indian Company. They sold slaves going up into Spain. They sold slaves. This is why till this very day there are dark of you slaves all throughout Morocco, which is Morocco is what they call Casablanca. If y'all pay attention to John Q. Casablanca, Morocco. Okay? So he's on the Ashanti. See, I told you this is their problem. Everything that they are that has nothing to do with the American hemisphere. And this is why you are so easily dismissed or having such a hard time. You want to speak on Ashanti? You want to speak on it? Go over into Africa and do that shit. Period. Like, it's crazy.
Which is Hebrew Ashanti, or one family. This is the recognition that there's a separateness on the island, but together we are one family. Now, without the recognition of that separateness, Honorable Prime Minister, there cannot be unity amongst the people.
No, when he's saying that we are one people and we are one people on the island, when they were making their Maroon IDs, people in St. Andrew and these different other places, people in Portmore and these things. When a Kongpong made their Kongpong Maroon ID, did they come and offer any IDs to you? Did they come and offer any IDs to you? Did they say, here's some IDs? People in the garrison, did they come and offer any IDs to you? Brothers and sisters here on the mainland, did they come and offer any IDs to you? Did they? Did they do that? If we're all one people. They didn't do that. And they look at the people who they don't identify as Maroons, as vagabonds, as criminals. Okay? For the most part. I'm not saying all of them, but earlier when it was spoken of criminals and going up into Maroon areas when he was speaking, right? Again, like I said, his two little minks that he has behind him, serving behind him, that we've been dealing with that we've dealt with before for years. This is when you hear them speak. This is the comprehension that you get of what they think of townspeople that are not identified as Maroons. They think very lowly and very little of us. Okay? But when they're doing their charities and they need their relief or rescue food products and these things, we're the ones that they come to. Us from the towns, the ones who are also abroad. And they talk very, very foul very vile things about those who went abroad. They say you ran away from your home, and whatever happens to you overseas, that's what you deserve to get. This is their speaking. Okay, even though they themselves has families and these things ties overseas. This is not made up stuff that I'm saying. This is stuff that was told directly to me. Okay, which is why they started also separating themselves from American Arawaks and I. All right, let's keep going though.
Of many, one people.
Tell me, I'm sure you're familiar with the arrangements involving the Kalinagos in Dominica.
Yes, very much.
Would that be a kind of template for the Maroons in Jamaica, or that would not be appropriate?
Well, I think what needs to happen, to be honest, as I said, is dialogue.
Now, the Kalinagos in Dominica, I want you to pay attention to them too, because just like what he's trying to do, they have a set of people in their diaspora that are attempting or doing the same thing, that are selling out their. I tell you, people, the long game, and I wish I still had access to the first channel, the big channel with that had majority of the information, because we've done videos on them too, to show that they have teamed with the Syrians, people from Syria that has went to Dominica. And then don't forget, in the islands where the Germans have created and built churches as missionaries, that has been in the islands for over 200-300 years. These German people that has been down there. You understand? So these are the ideology that these ones are pushing, that are getting particular recognitions and documentation signed. They're selling out. And they have to start pushing the African agenda. Okay? Because the minute you stop identifying as the first people of the land and you start adding in other identification markers, you are usurping yourself off of your own land. And now you have become a person without a home that's locked into a contractual obligation to a colonizing entity. That means you no good. But because the very few out of these deals are the ones that's going to prosper, they care not for the majority that's going to suffer. Plain and simple. All right, folks, I'm about to wrap this up. But I'm about to wrap it here. Close that out. All right. But people, man, look. Let me go through the comments. When I speak to an Akongpong Maroon, they had the same talking patterns. They don't care for the rest of the people in the lower lands. Exactly. Nor do they care for the communities around Akongpong. They don't care for them. And that is the point. That is one of the main points that I'm trying to show. But these folks, they went to school for psychology, political science, media. So they know how to play along, to act like they're getting along with you, to gain your trust. But they really don't have your best interests at heart. Okay? Like I said, you got these organizations like the Taino organizations and these things. Your elders, the folks that founded those organizations with the intent to usurp from the darker view and browner view people who they know are more so through bloodline connected to the First Nations people of this land. This is why those organizations was founded. And if you pay attention, when they started receiving those charitable funds, that's when they started going to all of these other websites, historical sites, and having them rewrite back the documents that they have published on these sites, which is why the Prime Minister Andrew Holness had shut down the library and the archival records and was trying to introduce a more digital system because they were rewriting a lot of the documentations on the record to add in words that never existed. But if you go and view the original documentations, not in its typed out format, but in its handwritten format, you'll see that it mentions nothing about Taino. It only says Arawak or Anahuacan and these type of words, but nothing of a Taino, because a Taino is a Tadino, which is an Umbrian from the European countries. And even then, in that Tadino history, which also goes back into the whole Santeria thing, okay? This is where the whole portion of the spell castings and stuff get involved, which goes back into the Santeria voodoo rituals, right? But even in that portion of the history, it still marks the Tadinos as usurpers of identity over from Umbria. So they're not even the Umbrians. Okay? Must understand this history on different levels. All right? Just wake up, people. Right? So the younger generations who have been brainwashed and indoctrinated by your older generations, they've been lying to you. They've lied to you. Okay? So when you hear them say now, oh, and the Black Indians, they're trying to add in that African concept like, oh, you know, these Indians that mated with these Africans. That's what they're trying to do. Still being deceivers. The deception don't stop with them because they know what's up. They know what's up. But that's what happens when you have corporate money involved in this thing. People get greedy, sell out. That's what happens where over 100 years of lies are now coming to the surface. So they have to protect that because they've stole hundreds of millions of acres of land and watched as a set of people have been systematically and strategically genocide through the badge, through these medical genocides, through an educational genocide, through paper genocide, ethnocide. They've watched and they celebrated because it meant more lands acquired again for them. And now that the truth is coming out, oh, our Black brothers. You understand? Wake up, people. Aboriginal Rama said, but if you're a sovereign state, why don't you run the water? Yes, exactly. Because they're not sovereign. And then the money that they were getting, they spent it on other foolishness instead of the main necessities that needed to have been taken care of at the time. Okay? That's why. All right, y'all, I'm about to get up out of here. With that being said, I'll say peace, love, light to everyone that has joined us. Much love to you all. Like I said, probably this Saturday, but I know soon I'm going to do it live about the gene editing and these things. And we're going to get into the heart of it and what it has to do with also everything that was being spoken on within this interview here, as well with Chief Richard Curry of the Kung Pung Maroons and the former Prime Minister Bruce Golden. All right. With that being said, I say peace, love, light to you all, and much respect and much love to you all that has joined us today. Again, we did create the Shitabi Media or the Rumble for the Rumble site platform. We will be getting to that in the coming months of building on top of that. And on our Encore site for the Shitabi Media podcast, they will now allow live streaming to be done from that also as well. And we are international in over 75 different countries right now from that platform as well. And we have new content that we will be uploading onto that platform and we will also start doing our streams from that platform also as well. So look out for it. It's coming. Peace, love, and light to you all.